Mr. President, last week the House of Representatives passed the Equal Representation Act. This common sense bill would require that only U.S. citizens are counted for the purposes of allotting congressional districts and electoral votes. This makes sense. In order for every American's vote to have equal weight, only legal voters should be counted in apportioning voting power. On the other hand, the current method of counting illegal aliens and allocating Americans' voting power dilutes the votes of some Americans. It also serves as a perverse incentive for open borders and sanctuary cities because resettling illegal aliens increases the relative political power of the states and the voters that do so. What was once called a conspiracy theory turned out to be an objective fact that Democrats now acknowledge. Migrants here illegally are being counted in the census, and they are counted for determining electoral college votes and congressional seats. Commerce Secretary Raimondo confirmed this yesterday when I asked her in a committee hearing. It's impossible to dispute that this policy increases the voting power of districts and states that resettle more illegal aliens. In fact, some Democrats have taken it a step further, calling for more illegal immigration to increase their power. Just this year, video surfaced of a U.S. representative from New York. Her name is Yvette Clarke, who said, when asked about illegal immigration, and I quote, "I need more people in my district just for redistricting purposes." Yes, that's what she said. She said the quiet part out loud. She represents the same district where James Madison High School is located. You may recall last winter, James Madison High School was the school where the students were told to go home and study by Zoom so that their school could be used to house illegal aliens. What Congressman Clarke means, Mr. President, is that Americans are fleeing blue cities and states en masse because of failing government. And congressional seats are allocated based on population. So if you're losing population, you either have to backfill it or lose congressional seats. That's where the illegal aliens come in. This Congresswoman's statement helps explain why President Biden and Democrats are allowing record-breaking illegal immigration. It's to preserve their political power. Since President Biden took office alone, over 10 million illegal aliens have entered our country. That could amount to more than a dozen congressional seats. This bill is simple, Mr. President. It would simply require that the Census Bureau include a citizenship question to provide a basic understanding of the U.S. population, which is the purpose of the census. And it would allow for delineation between citizens and non-citizens for apportionment purposes. And my bill would count only citizens for purposes of congressional and electoral college apportionment. In other words, it would count only citizens for determining citizens' voting power. That way, the power of each American's vote doesn't depend on how many illegal aliens are in their area. The Equal Representation Act will ensure the weight of every American's vote is equal, it will restore the one person, one vote principle, and it will certainly end the perverse incentive under which illegal immigration increases political power. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that, as if in legislative session and notwithstanding Rule 22, the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 386, H.R. 7109. I further ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Ohio, or from Hawaii.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. A couple of points. The first point is actually the main point, which is that we had the toughest bipartisan bill on border security in generations on this floor. And when Donald Trump found out how tough it was and how effective it was going to be, he told Senate Republicans to kill it. And that's what they did. And so, spare me the crocodile tears about the situation at the border. We had the opportunity to fix that, And Donald Trump explicitly said, don't pass this, blame me. Blame me. Number two, my good friend, the senator who feels very passionately about this, his quibble is with the Constitution. The Constitution provides that all persons in the United States are counted, all persons. It says nothing about their citizenship status. And so if you've got a problem with the way the census is conducted, you have to amend the Constitution of the United States. Not the law, not the statutory laws of the United States, but the Constitution of the United States. And I have lost count of the number of times that Republicans have tried and failed to add citizenship questions to the census. And we have to see this for what it is, an attempt to reduce the count in immigrant communities. Unless that sounds like a sort of rhetorical flourish, a little bit too much, let me just remind you that it was only a few years ago that the Supreme Court ruled against adding this question. They ruled against it. And why? It's because the real reason that they wanted to add it was, and I quote from a conservative effort who thought it would, here's the quote, be advantageous to Republicans and non-Hispanic whites, be advantageous to Republicans and non-Hispanic whites. They wanted to ask people the citizenship question, not in a longer census questionnaire, not as part of their annual data gathering, but the first question out of the gate, to scare people from interacting with the federal government because, listen, someone knocks on your door from the federal government, and the first question is, are you a citizen? You will decline to participate if you have friends or family or cousins or neighbors who may have mixed citizenship status. And here's the other quote, that it would clearly be a disadvantage for Democrats. This was never about gathering data. This was never about enforcing the law. It has always been and continues to be a pretext to scare people, particularly immigrants, out of taking the census, out of being counted at all, to undercount people and rig the political system in favor of one political party. And don't take this progressive Democrat from Hawaii's word for it. Take this Supreme Court's word for it. I am not a lawyer, but I remember this. I remember they said they had no non-pretextual reason to ask that question. In other words, they were asking this question in order to gain partisan advantage. So for those reasons, I respectfully object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, first I'd like to remark that the border security bill that my esteemed colleague references would simply increase the processing of illegal aliens into this country. If this language were incorporated in it, we would stop the incentive for illegal migration. That would be the fix. That was not in the bill. This bill would have not, the bill that he referenced, would have not addressed the border security at all. Mr. President, my Democrat colleague is objecting to legislation that would actually restore the one person, one vote principle, and it would end the perverse incentive under which illegal immigration increases political power. It's indisputable that Congress can direct that a citizenship question be included in the census. It was included in the census for most of our history up until Barack Obama's administration took it out in 2010. And the Constitution says that the census shall be conducted, quote, in such manner as Congress shall by law direct. Congress does indeed have the authority to do this. In fact, we've had the citizenship question until 2010. Second, on the question of what population is counted for apportioning House seats and electoral votes, the Constitution says that you count the number of persons in the U.S. It doesn't mean literally everyone in the U.S. We don't count people here on vacation. We don't count people here on temporary stays. Why would we count people that are here that are broken in illegally? It means citizens who are members of the American political body, a body that votes on representation and who have permanent allegiance to our constitutional system. In fact, it may be unconstitutional to count illegal aliens under the 14th Amendment because that dilutes some citizens' votes and undermines the principle of one person, one vote. The constitutional argument is simply a dodge for the indefensible position that opposition to this bill means support for the notion that more illegal aliens should mean more political power for the states and the communities that attract them. Thank you, Mr. President.